So my article is about dementia in the elderly. That is so on point with this internship. There was a lot in that article that like made more sense to me after working with the residents versus if I had read it before. Like I never realized how much the activities we do actually help. Like physical activities, or we have this one program called Java Time. It's a set time each week for each pavilion, and it's more sensory. They have wind chimes to get them there. They sing the music, and I never realized how that could help. But this article explains it very well. Of it kind of just gets their brain working. Yeah, dimension. Sorry. There's a lot in that article. So like, there's some stuff that left my little brain after the week, but the big part was the activities, because I always thought that they just got the most basic care of like you getting food, shelter, nurses. But they do so much more, and it's kind of a lot sometimes to take care of that many people. So I'm trying to like pull up the article at the same time as talking. I was not as prepared as I expected myself to be. Sorry. But I believe something else, and a big part of what I've learned at the internship is that dementia hits everyone extremely differently. There is one resident, we will call her Anna. She always believes that this is her first time doing it. Like, this is my first time staying here overnight, or this is my first time eating dinner here. And she's been here since 2019. Sorry. And it's also really interesting because the other dementia patients know that something's wrong, like with the other residents, but they don't realize that something's off with them. It all can also depend on the state that they're at. A couple residents have lost a bit of their filters that you have, especially the older men. It is extremely unfortunate sometimes. There's one resident who very often stares at us women interns. He tries to touch us. They're still working on it. They yell at him, but you lose your filter as you get old and stuff. I'm so sorry about the chaos of my dogs right now. He just fell off the bed.
It's okay. It adds excitement.
But there's some residents that it doesn't affect as intensely. Sometimes it just means they're having a bad day. There's this pair, they are besties since they met each other in the pavilion. And they're so easy to talk to because it's just like as a normal conversation and not as much of me trying to figure out how to not stress them out with their memory. There are certain ways to talk to residents, certain ways to interview them, because the goal is to figure out what they remember without stressing them out for them not remembering, which is always a challenge because the certain wording is needed, and I'm not the best with words. So it's a very simple ground. Sometimes they don't remember meeting you. Sometimes they remember meeting you from the day before, but then they won't remember tomorrow. That part can hurt a little bit sometimes, especially when you've grown attached to one of them. But like it's just so sometimes when I thought about dementia before, I always thought like it affected everyone the same way, of like you just forget your memory, or you think you're in a different time. But like I was so wrong. It's interesting to see how they interact with each other, because they're still people, and I really wish I could have known what they were like before. I get to learn a lot from their families. They come, a lot of families come almost every day, and you get to see how appreciative they are for the help, because a lot of people don't put their family in a nursing home until they can't do it anymore. And I feel like that's like one of the hardest decisions to have to make, and to be able to like comfort them through that, it's a little helpful. So it's like a satisfying feeling almost. But yeah, that's pretty much what I remember from the article. I didn't have any experience with dementia before this. I didn't have much experience with the elderly in general. So it's been maybe more eye-opening to me than it could have been for other people who have more experience with this in regular life. I've heard a lot of stories over and over from one singular resident about their mom. It was really cute, but some of them go back to almost like a childhood state. The one man who keeps trying to touch people, when he's not doing that, he's kind of adorable because he's just clapping and laughing, and he's just here having a good time. Some people get really mean though. Some people are really angry in their old age, which is kind of intimidating. But like the good moments make it worth helping out. So, sorry, I'm a little nervous. I don't know why.
It's all good. Yeah, anytime you have to give a presentation, even if it's as informal as this, the nerves come out. So no worries.
Let's see if I can. Depressive symptoms, that's a big part that I blanked from my memory. The depression, I've seen a lot of it. In here, there's one resident who's always asking about her husband, where he's at, even though he doesn't live there. And I never know what to tell her. Luckily, it's a case that he is alive and comes to visit. If it was a case where he passed on, I really wouldn't know what to tell her. But she's struggling a bit, I think, with figuring it all out, because she is still pretty new in at Our Lady. She used to be a case where she would try to run away. Like, you have to keep a close eye on her when you're going in and out of the doors. The alarms have gone off a couple times because someone tried to get out, and it's just so intimidating. There's some people who just get really quiet and they don't leave their bed because they're depressed. There's some people who take out their depression, again, in an angry fashion, by picking fights with other residents. But we try so hard to fight against it by like letting them know like people are here. Each intern has a minimum of 3 people they meet with one-on-one, to where they get alone time with someone. We have a mail program where family sends mail, we give it to them. But if you don't get any mail from your family, we have generic cards to give them, to where they don't feel like left out. There's a bingo store on Mondays where they can get like word searches or a teddy bear from playing bingo. Like, Our Lady does a lot of stuff for our patients. Our residents, each Friday, moving a, we make sure they can go to any religious thing they need to get through. They even have a pastor come in, like there's a pastor who works there full time, that they have a father come in for like Ash Wednesday. They came in, I think they're coming in for Easter or something, to be able to appeal to what they need. Because Our Lady is a very religious place. They will take anyone, even if you're not Catholic. And there's a devotions a day for people who aren't Catholic to talk about religion. But a majority of the residents are Catholic residents. So a lot of things are based around like religion and God, which is also a bit intimidating on its own. But but if it helps him get through, that's always a good time. There are a lot of different kinds of dementia. I don't know all of them that well. Alzheimer's is the main one of the people who are at Our Lady. But regular dementia is also, well, not regular, but like not Alzheimer's dementia is a lot of them are there too. There's one resident who just came in this time while I was here, and he's, I believe, 99 right now. So like it just started affecting him that badly. He actually published a book at age 95. So his dementia developed pretty quickly. COVID has affected the functioning of people with dementia like the elderly in here pretty intensely. One of my favorite residents, she's one of my one-on-ones. I talk to her every day. She is a country girl from Shenandoah, and she's so proud of it. And she used to be able to walk and not be on oxygen, but now she can't really walk. She's on oxygen full time. And that part is a little sad because half the time the nurses just kind of keep her in the kitchen because it's a lot to move her. So just trying to keep her in one spot most of the time, which isn't really fair to her because it kind of isolates her a little bit. And she is the most social being I've ever met. And I'm a little intimidated to move her because to move her and the oxygen at the same time is a lot. I had to do an interview with her, which was stress of its own because so sometimes when you try to talk to people, they just kind of like stare, like listening, but it intimidates me so. But I had to get help to move her into a different room to do it. And it was terrifying. The oxygen intake is too much for me to handle. But some people, they can't really even speak that well. They just say things like air. They can do like one word things or spelling. They can't feed themselves. They have to get so much help, but they're still some of the sweetest people. This person used to walk like 3 months ago before he got COVID, and now he's just needs full care and assistance. It's kind of sad to see because it's kind of like making it harder for us to help their brain because movement of the body helps the brain a lot. And so there's just a bit of a decline, but it's still worth trying to help them, obviously, because they're amazing people. They're still people. But some of the most common activities we do for helping them with their mental activity is trivia. Some of them are actually pretty good at it. Some of them are not at all good at it. Word searches are a popular one. They do morning stretches every morning to make sure they move. But they are so stubborn that sometimes they just don't do it. They are some of the most stubborn people I know. So at this point, usually it's a lot easier to just say no when someone asks you something. So what we do is we come up and say something like, we're gonna go here now. You're gonna come with me. So they don't really have a choice. You just kind of take them. Because if you don't understand what someone's saying, your first instinct is to just, no, not for me. There is a bit of a stigma to people with dementia. A lot of people assume that they are going to be a lot worse than they are. Um, it's often assumed that that when you meet them, you'll see the dementia more than the person, and that is not at all the case. Um, it's unfortunately, I was one of those people before I actually worked with them, of thinking like, wow, all I'm gonna notice is like how they're different, like how they're odd, like um, but in fact, I see everything else now. There's one resident who, anytime you play music, she's up and dancing. She's a little cha-cha. Um, I see a lot of friendships happening in each pavilion. There's a set of besties in each one. Um, some more iconic than others, but all cute nonetheless. They even I talk a lot about my own life to try to get them to talk about theirs. And one resident, I mentioned that I was gonna get a hat for my dog, and she made fun of me in the most playful way. And it was one of the best experiences I've had with the resident in this time. It made her smile, which on a day that she was a little off. So it was like, goal achieved. um, but that's pretty much it, I think, um, based off the article. Um, but their quality of life is extremely lessened because of dementia. But that's where we come in to try to improve it. Take them outside when we can. Yeah.
All right, did you have any discussion questions you wanted to get people talking about?
I was struggling a little bit to try to come up with them because like the article is very explanatory about everything. But have I guess I'd like to hear if you guys have any experience with um dementia or the elderly in general. Feel
So
free.
my grandfather actually passed away from having Alzheimer's and like dementia and stuff like that. And it was hard because he didn't remember a lot of things. Like if you'll say, you remember the time when, we did this and this and that, or the family cookout, or he just will like kind of look and sometimes don't even know who you are. Like if y'all be like, hi, I'm your granddaughter and stuff like that, he kind of just look at me and it'd be like, kind of look at me as if he didn't know or recognize my face. And it was really hard, especially because he was in a nursing home. And when he passed away, so it was like we can only do it so much because he lived in Arkansas. So it's like we can only see him like every once in a while. Like we didn't go a lot because my grandma really doesn't like to travel, and plus her dad and her didn't have the best relationship growing up. So I feel like that was really important because that hit her hard because she didn't get a chance to really see him before he died. And like she kind of felt bad because it's just like, she wanted to bury the hatchet of having that grudge against him for not, being in her life all the way, or giving her up and stuff like that. And it's just like you said, the like quality of life is so important because like you never know when you're going to lose somebody. It's like it's basically so sad because he kind of already was lost in life, so he wasn't already enjoying life before he passed away because he couldn't really remember anything. And then where he did pass away, he didn't get a chance to like pass away at home, peacefully with family and stuff. It was in a nursing home, and then so it's just things like that. Hit a lot, and like you said, it's very common now in elder people to have like Alzheimer's, dementia and stuff like that, and it gets like really severe, of course, and it's a sad thing. But yeah, that was my experience with it. As far as like working with older people, I haven't worked with older people. I was kind of either work with younger like children or something like that, but I couldn't. I think it will be harder to work with older people for me because it's just like you said, if you get attached to them and then one day they don't remember you and things like that, I feel like that's very hard to deal with. So I commend you for going in that position in that field and everything like that. And we need a lot of people to deal with older because I feel like older people get overlooked because since they are older, they're like, oh yeah, they're about already gone anyway. What's the point of taking care of them when that's not true because they are a human being and have a life and had a very youthful life and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, getting attached is one of the things I've been struggling with. I told myself not to in the beginning. And now I'm so scared every time I hear that a resident passed away. I'm like, please don't be one of these people. I did witness a lot of death so far. Actually, I think about 4 residents in the whole building have died in my presence here. Um, and I saw someone's body get taken away in a body bag, which was an experience I could have lived my whole life without. It was one of our dementia patients too. So this is gonna sound horrible. But lucky for me, didn't really know him yet. It's unfortunate that I didn't get to. It's unfortunate that he passed away, but if it was one of the people I meet on with one-on-one, or the people I'm like, oh yeah, they're my girls, I think I would have broken down a bit. I'm sorry to hear about your grandpa though. I hope he was taken care of in that nursing home and like at least had some quality of life there in Arkansas. But thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and Ashanti, I think you brought up a really good point that, like a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to work with old people, but like they need care, right? And they need support. And honestly, it's the biggest growing area in healthcare right now, is geriatrics, because the baby boomers are all aging, right? And people are living longer. So that's where like the majority of our patient population is right now. Yeah, and I'll just share, it was interesting because I did neuropsychological assessments when I was in grad school, but most of them we did at our campus clinic. And so the vast majority were students, right, who were doing like ADHD or LD assessments, which are still really interesting. But I had a client I saw for therapy on my placement, which was at a local hospital. And I like couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. I thought it might have been, I don't know, bipolar disorder or something, just trying to put my finger on it. And she ended up having vascular dementia. We figured out from looking at her other records. And one of the things that her experience, and it just sounded awful, was that she was having essentially hallucinations, or she thought that there were bugs crawling all over her apartment, which just sounds horrifying. And she was like, I'll bring some for you. And I was like, oh God, right? Because at that point I wasn't sure if they were hallucinations or not. You never know with the quality of life that unfortunately some people end up being stuck with. But no, she brought in a little baggie of like bird seed and things like that. And it was so interesting because my neuropsychology professor was married to another neuropsychologist, and she was at the hospital as a supervisor. It happened to be like in the office chatting with her supervisee. And I was like, man, I have this case. And I started to tell her about it. And she was like, does she carry around a little baggie of the bugs? And I was like, what? Is this a thing? And apparently in some patients with vascular dementia, this is a thing. So who knows? But yeah, I mean, even she was pretty early on for like, that was sort of her main symptoms. So I was able to help her with therapy, which was great, just because like Kaylee Sue was saying, a lot of these folks, in addition to their cognitive symptoms, they're dealing with depression, right? Anxiety, things along those lines, just like the rest of us, right? But also because unfortunately, kind of as I alluded to at the beginning, and as Ashanti hinted at, like elderly folks in mainstream Western culture are not necessarily that respected, which is really unfortunate because there are other cultures like indigenous peoples, for example, often the elderly are revered, right? And you go to them for advice and things like that. But here sometimes they're treated like, oh, you're retired, you're done, right? You have nothing else to give to society, when clearly they do. Yeah, the elderly person I interact with the most is my grandfather. So my folks actually moved here during the pandemic, and my grandmother had just passed. They had been married 70 years, which like is mind-boggling. And she chose to do at home hospice, and so like she passed essentially in their bed. And obviously there's a lot of really difficult stuff around that, so he decided he wanted to change of pace and he moved here with my folks. And so that's great, we get to see him and interact with him, and he gets to see my daughter. at least once a week, which is fantastic. So, but yeah, and he's still like, not spry, but like cognitively there. So, which is great. And he's 91. So, yeah. Does anyone else have any other experiences you want to share?
Um, I don't know. I have a little experience. I have a 70-something-year-old friend, family friend. She has cerebral palsy. So she mentally, cognitively, she's mostly there, just like regular fading. But physically, she can't do as much. But I don't get to see her that much, so it did not fully prepare me for this experience. But I also wanted to speak to what Ashanti said about the elderly needing more care. It's a hard field, because they I think that sometimes it's really nice to work with the elderly because you can learn so much from them. The dementia part makes it a little more difficult because they don't fully remember. But when you do hear what they remember, it is really cute. Sometimes it can be sad to hear about like their significant others that passed away and how they used to cook it for them, so they never really learned how to cook. But that's why I kind of like working with them. It gives me a lot to learn. It's another discussion question could be, if you ever got dementia when you were older, would you prefer, how would you want to be, like, I guess, like, would you prefer being in a nursing home with the full care, or would you prefer like at home hospice?
I don't really like to think about it. But I guess a nursing, I don't really know what a hospice is like, if I'm gonna be honest. I don't really know exactly, like, I just know a hospice is just somewhere to live until you die. And just that idea of that is just kind of, rather than in a nursing home, I feel like you are not as isolated, maybe. Um, Granted, there might be other people who don't really acknowledge that you're there or like may not remember you the next day, like from other patients. But I guess because you have that care and nursing homes sometimes plan activities and community events. It really just depends on the nursing home. But I think I would rather go to a nursing home just for if family is, far, far away, at least I have those people around me and I could still be active a little bit more, I guess.
Yeah, and just to let you all know, in the past, I've actually had interns in hospice. So hospice is usually like you have 6 months or less left to live. And it, obviously we can't always know. So some people are in it longer and some people are in it much less, right? Like some people, it really is end of life. You might only be in hospice care for a couple of days. Yeah, and sometimes there's a facility and sometimes you get at home hospice care. So when my students have done hospice in the past, they've done home visits, for example, and pretty similar to what you do, sort of one-on-one sitting and chatting. And sometimes it's just they kind of sit with the patient while they sleep so that the caregivers can like take a shower or something like that. But yeah, Sasha, I feel the same way. I kind of like don't like to think about it. I think because I study psychology and the brain so much, like one of my biggest fears is like still being at least somewhat with it, but not being able to articulate that. Right. And we don't know for people with dementia because they can't articulate like how much they are still aware of what's going on. So yeah, I think that would be really tough. And yeah, I think I agree with you that, if you were at a facility where there were activities and things like that, it might be really, and I know that like a lot of folks are now, so like some nursing homes will have like apartments around them where folks who are maybe like getting up there but still can live fairly independently will go, but then they can still like participate in the activities and things like that. So it feels like that might be a good transition, something like that. What do other people think?
Um, I would probably, like everybody's saying, I don't think about stuff like that, but I would like to be surrounded by my family and things like that. But I will understand, like, everybody has their own life and it's like a lot. So a nursing home is like a chance to try to like still be able to do something and have a chance to like still be around people and stuff like that. But then at the same time, I have had bad experience with nursing homes because a lot of people that I have known or like their other like my friends' parents or like grandparents was in a nursing home has passed away. And it's like sometimes they will be doing okay when they're not in the nursing home. And then when they get there, depending on I think that I can't remember, I don't know who said that depending on the nursing home and how they take care of your people, of the people that's there, it's like some of them can't get to everyone so quickly. Some of them really like, maybe leave a patient, like somebody, not, I wouldn't say a patient, but leave someone there, like maybe unattended for a while when they might need more assistance or, so I just think it really does all depend. So when it does come down to that time, it's like, if it is a choice of my family, like for a nursing home, I just hope that it's like a good one, like do more research and like, read reviews and things on the nursing homes because certain ones, like I said, a lot of people will be okay, but get there and pass away. And it's just like that's sad too, because of some nurses, it may be a select few of nurses trying to handle like 50 people and they can't do every single body's like room and get to them on time. So that I feel like that plays a big factor too. But I would say yeah, probably nursing home. So yeah. Or maybe a family member, maybe who might have time to take care of me will be fine too. So like something like that.
Well, I think about this a lot. I am a very long-term planner, and if I don't have an, even though it's very unrealistic, I like to think about things in hopes that like maybe I know what will happen. Um, I would also choose a nursing home, because that, the right one, like you said, like some aren't the best. I would want one, not to brag, but Our Lady's a very good one, I think. They have a set crew just for activities. They have activities every day. They try their best to get everyone included, involved. I'd want a nursing home like Our Lady. I was gonna say something else and it completely left my brain. One of my biggest fears is losing my cognitive ability. Getting dementia is one of my biggest fears as a human. So it's a bit scary sometimes to watch it happen to other people. But the thought of maybe one day being supported, like I see these people being supported, ideally family would visit, send mail. There's some residents who get like 10 pieces of mail in one day. And they are still pretty new, but it's really nice to see how much they're loved. I get to see a lot of pictures of them from like in their families, what they hang up in their rooms or put outside their door to try to like remind them, I guess. One lady has a picture of her dog and she was telling me about him one day. It was really cute. But I think nursing homes can do a lot of good. There are some cases where people do die really close to coming in. But a big part of that is their psychological state, not just dementia, but like them trying to take in their new life. Some people I don't think are able to handle being in a nursing home. I think sometimes that just takes too much of a toll, so they give up really early, which is really sad to see. But most people, from my experience, have been doing okay if they have the right support. They can transition into the nursing home life decently. Yeah.
Yeah, and I decided to like look more at they call it independent living, where you might have like a little apartment essentially but still live on the grounds of a place that has assisted living. And so like this is just one I'm looking at. It's, you know, like you could do, it kind of sounds like college, like you choose your meal plan, 1 to 3 meals per day. There are planned social and educational events. There are fully equipped kitchens in your apartments. They'll give you transportation for your medical appointments. But you know, there's all these activities and things like that. So, and obviously these can be quite pricey, right? And I would imagine that Our Lady isn't cheap either, because like you said, Kaylee, so it's a really good facility. Other one we've had people work with in the past, and actually one of our alums is the supervisor that we connect with there, which is awesome. She actually was one of the first people to take this class after I created it, and now she supervises, which is really cool. But is Westminster Canterbury, and they essentially have apartments, and you know, there is sort of a assisted living part of it, but they're right on the bay. Apparently, like some of our retired trustees from Virginia Wesleyan live there now, which is why we have a connection with them. And there's like a living learning program we do with them. So like I've gone over there and like given a talk previously. And I know some professors have like taught a class over there. And I think if they want, although I'm sure the past couple of years with COVID, it's been more difficult. But when all that's done, they could actually come to our campus and take classes too, which I think is kind of cool. So yeah, depending on the facility, they may offer, you know, more or fewer opportunities for things like that. All right, Gail, so I don't want to cut you off, but you feel like you covered everything you want to cover? Great, awesome. Great way to lead off. And yeah, so as you can see, a little bit of a presentation to show us about the article, and then we'll just chat about it after. So come with discussion questions if you have any like videos, group activities, things like that you want to do. That is good too. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop our